Hello and welcome to N=40. It's beginning to get autumnal, it's beginning to get dark earlier outside. And what I'd like to talk about today is I'd like to carry on the maps work we were doing, but try and move it across into Android. So what I've done is I've just taken the, oops, there's some pages up there. I've just taken the N39 project and I have literally just pulled it in and called it N40. And to this project, what I'd like to do is add an Android project. I will add a standard, box standard Android, and it's called Mapit. Mapit.droid. And to that, I would like to add the reference to the core. And I'd like to add the NuGet packages. I'll use the local ones for speed. So I'll add in those, and I'll also add in the Fragment support, because we're going to use Fragments, because Fragments is the way that Google Play in particular uses Android for maps. It uses the Fragments. So I'll do that, and then the next thing I need to do is also pull in the component for Google Play. So I'll go to the component store, and I will pull in Google Play. Because I want to go back to, the pre-times, I'm going to put in the Froyo one. So we've got all these revisions here. I may as well go for Google Play. I'm not sure which one I actually chose there. Can I go back? It's this one that I'm going to choose, the Google Play Services Froyo Rev 12. I pulled a face there. I'm not too sure which one I'm supposed to have picked, but Froyo certainly means that it will be compatible back to older apps, which is useful if you're going out to older devices, or if you're going out to things like Kindle, which still run older versions of Android. So that's added that component, and then if you actually look at the documentation for this guy, then what you'll discover is that it's got a lot of steps here. Oh, has it? Well, if it did work, it's got a lot of steps here which basically look like this guy. And what it is in order to get started with the Google Play Services APIs, you have to get hold of a key. And in order to get hold of a key, what you have to do is you have to go to a certain folder. I don't know if you can see it here on your hard drive, which is for the debug is this location, and for real will be a different location. And then you need to run the key tool from the Java SDK. So I've already done that. It's in this window here, and you can see, it's essentially the same thing. Let me just zoom out. I'm running the key tool and I'm passing in the information. So it's exactly the same line as we had in here. Passing in the information, and it gives me back all of this SHA1 and NB5 and other hashes to do with my debug key. So once I've got that, you then have to go to the API console. And I'm just following through the steps here. And in the API console for your project, you better make sure that somewhere down here you enable Google Maps Android. And just for good, I won't bother doing anything else. That should be enough. If you do need other things like iOS and perhaps some of these other engine APIs and geocoding, then you might need those. You might benefit from that. I'm not going to use any of the others. And then once you've enabled that, you do need to go to API access. And you do need to create a new key. So you create a new Android key, and it says give me one of these like this. So you go back to your window here, and it's the SHA1 it said. So you find the SHA1, you mark it, you copy it, drag it back in here. There's your SHA1, and then you give it your example. So this is going to be your package name you're going to use. This is going to be com.MvvmCross.mapit, and I'll just take a note of that. You create that key, and it says it was created successfully up here, and so hopefully you can see it here somewhere, com.MvvmCross.mapit. And once you've done that, then back in your Maps project, and sorry there are so many steps, what you then need to do is you go to the properties, you create an Android manifest, and you give it the package name Mapit, and so we'll call it Mapit. all the other things you can leave as is. You can then start setting these kind of, you know, access whatever here. However, I find this editor is a little bit buggy. So the best thing to do is to exit that editor and never open it again. And instead go across to where it's generated this. And then using the hints that are provided here, then you should be able to start adding things. So we know that we have to have a meta tag for our Android maps. So we go across, and in our application we're going to add a meta tag for our Android maps. And our key from our console, here's our API key, is this one. Copy. And so we will just replace that default content. And then there are other things that it says to do in this getting started guide. So it says that you need these permissions. And it says obviously you have to replace com.example.map.demo with the name of your application. So we're going to do that. So in our manifest we're going to add this, and our application is called this one. Yeah, this is the bit that's a bit buggy, I find, with the other, with using the built-in editor. It doesn't quite preserve these if you use the built-in editor, so be careful of it. And then we need all of these, it says. So we'll add all of those. And then it also finally says you may as well add this feature requiring OpenGL. So hopefully at this point we've got all of those things included. So I'll close that file, and that is actually our setup done. It's a little bit painful, but it's not, you know, hideous. And the main thing is just to go through these steps in this getting started. It's not very long, and just make sure you do it slowly, and eventually you'll get there. Okay, so that is our basic setup. Then what we need to do is we want to add some views for the things that we had, the view models we had in core. And if you remember, we had a home view model that kind of just had 5 commands in it, so we can easily do that. So we'll take first view, and we'll create a home view. And in our resources we will then take first view, and we will create a home view, and that's just going to be our buttons to choose where to go. So this should be very straightforward to just add 5 buttons and tell them to go places. Wait for it. Okay, so you know we won't use that. We'll do button android.text equals 1, and when we click that button we'd like to fire, what was it on the view model? First, second, third, fourth, fifth. So that's easy enough to do. So it's going to be very straightforward for us to add 5 buttons. Just quickly go through, make sure I haven't 2, 3, 4. I think I've got that wrong. It's not 3, it's third. And finally 5 and 5th. So that's our home view. That's just 5 buttons. That's not very exciting. So what we would like to do, however, is start on a first mapping view. So let's go to our first view back here. And what we'd like to do is, instead of using MVX activity, we're going to use MVX fragment activity, because it's going to contain these, you know, user controls called fragments. And hopefully, okay, that's telling us we need to include a add reference to mono Android support v4. There is a change underway within Xamarin that they're now using or supporting xamarin.android support v4. It's a bit fiddly and a bit confusing at the moment about how that's going to work out, but for now we're just going to add a reference to mono Android support v4 and it should be okay. And then we just need to edit the first view XML. So at this the moment we've still got this kind of text view and edit, and what I'd like to do is replace all of that with a map. So to do that, again, let's go back to our getting started. And unfortunately the getting started here is using a text is using commands to replace the fragment. I'd much rather just use a map fragment directly. So give me 1 second and I'll find the link for that. Okay, so I went away and did a quick search and I came up with this tuition site, and you can see here's an example of a support map fragment. I'm just going to copy it across into my project, and I will replace all of that at the moment with this support map fragment. I'm going to give it an ID, which is going to be map. And hopefully that should then, work quite happily. Let's just check this builds. And what I'll also now do is I will, I'm not sure, it should build this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to plug in an external device, which will be a tablet for this, and that will enable us to just quickly prove that we have a map on the screen and that it's actually working. If you use, there's an emulator package out there for x86 now, and you can use that to get maps up and running, but at the moment I'm still kind of using devices, so I may even go onto webcam to show this. Okay, let's just quickly go and plug that in. Okay, so this is the app running on my Nexus 10. All I had to do, in fact, was just plug it in, and if I now hit 1, then that comes up, and hopefully you see we've got a map. So that just shows that our keys and things are working straightforwardly, and that it's up and running. The only change I have made behind the scenes between video cuts was that I did remove the default activity from that project. That's the only thing. Okay, with that done, let's go back to the PC and do a bit more coding. So we now have a map working, but not showing anything. So let us take a look again at first view model. First view model was this 2 zombie situation, and a move command which moved the zombies apart. So we're going to try and replicate that. So within first view, let's just separate these things out into different files. Let's try and set up some binding. So what we're going to do is we're going to take first view, and I'll just zoom in a little bit. What I'd like to do is similar binding to what I did before. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to take the map and I'm going to get hold of it. So to do that, what I do is support fragment manager dot find fragment by ID, and this is going to be the resource dot ID dot map, because that's what it had in the XML. So that will give us our map instance. And then what I'd like to do is just bind to that map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a binding set. And let me just remind myself what we want to do. We want to add a couple of annotations, one for Keith and one for Helen, these 2 zombies. And we want to bind their locations, so that should be okay. So in order to do that, we need to add some annotations to the map, one for Keith and one for Helen. So in Android mapping, annotations aren't called annotations or annotations views, they're called markers. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to have a marker for Helen and a marker for Keith, and we'd like to set those up. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to add Helen and add Keith. So we'll do Helen, and to do this what you do is you create it via using something called a marker options. So this is going to be call it options. Options equals a new, and you set up your marker options. And what you would like to do is you'd like to set its position, so initially. And so what we'll do is options dot set position new lat long, and this is going to be, we're going to start with Keith. So let's add ourselves a convenient view model as well. So var and this is, just call it view model, equals, it's the first view model of our underlying view model. We're just casting it to give it a type. So then we've got this view model.keith.location.that and a view model.keith.location.long. And there are other things you could do. You could set a title for it and all sorts of other things to try and help it along. I know. Yeah, options.title equals, so this is Keith. No, you can't do it that way. There isn't a set thing, so you do actually have to do set key title Keith. Okay, so that will give us our options. We don't want it to be draggable, so we won't set anything else there. And then what we want to do is just set this to be Keith. So Keith equals options dot no, it's map dot add marker. Map dot add marker. Need to cast it. That's what I've done wrong. I haven't managed to cast this yet. Back to the right type. So this is a support map fragment. Yep. So now I should be able to do map.add. No. Why can't I add a marker? I should be able to. Let me just look at another. I don't understand why it's not giving me that option. Hang on, map dot. How strange. I should be able to do map dot. Just take a look at the IntelliSense for support map fragment. Oh, maybe I have to get the map from the map fragment. Let me just find this out. Oops. So what it is I don't manipulate the map fragment directly. I manipulate the map fragment's map. So let's just do that. So I'll call this the map fragment. And then what it is the map fragment actually has an underlying map. So that's the thing that I can add a marker to using the options. And then I can do the same thing using a new options. Options 2, and I'll just do this with Helen. So this will give me Helen's lat long. Okay, so that should work, and except I've forgotten to do Helen. So those on their own should mean that I get 2 zombies up and running on the screen. But obviously, you know, I want to bind their locations as well, so I'm going to have to do something clever for that. But let's just see if that on its own works. So I will run it again and move across to the camera. One moment. Okay, so half a minute later, I'm back across. And now I navigate to here, and hopefully we can see on here. Hopefully if I zoom in enough. Well, I've got at least one annotation there. I can't see both. Did I set up the code correctly? Believe I did. Let's just zoom in a bit more and check there aren't 2 annotations on top of each other. No, there's definitely only 1 annotation there. So I managed to get 1. I should have 2 annotations really there. Not sure why I haven't. Oops. And that's gone to a different app. Okay, so so back on the PC, and the reason why I didn't have 2 annotations, I only had 1, is because here, you can probably see in this little bit here, I used the wrong variable for my options for my second one. So if I just add an options, whoops, didn't need to do that. If I just add an options 2, then I will get 2. Okay, so that's the 2 markers will be added. And then what I'd like to do, just as the final part of this little section for first view, is I'd like to bind them so that their positions update. And so to do that, what I do is I create a binding set. So var set equals this dot create binding set, and it's going to be a binding set from my first view to my first view model. I use resharper to pull that in. When I've finished doing my binding, I want to apply it, so I'll just do set.apply at the bottom. And then in between, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind. And so the first thing I want to bind is Keith. And I'd like to bind Keith's, so Keith, lucky for me, because he's a marker, and a marker has a position that is get and set. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bind that to the view model, to the view model's property of vm.keith.location. And obviously they're not going to be the same type, so what I need to do is a little bit of conversion to make them work. So what I'll do is with conversion, and I'll actually pass in a new, and I haven't written this yet, so this is going to be a new value converter, which is going to be a location to position, location to lat long value converter, comma, and then that's not going to take any parameter, so it's just going to be null. And I'll use resharper to generate me this class, and I'll inherit from an MVX value converter, which is going from a location to a lat long. That's cool. And then what I can do in there is override, and I'd like to do the convert, and what I'm going to return is a new lat long, and so this is going to take value dot lat value dot long. Should be out. And if you're going the other way, I could do that. Override, convert back. That's going to return a new location with value dot latitude and value dot longitude. So that's a two-way converter, except it's saying, oh, it's saying that actually we don't have a constructor for that, so we have to use properties like this. So that's our two-way value converter, and I'll put that into its own file just to get it out of the way. And then back in our bindings, we've done Keith. Let's also do Helen the same way. Helen. Bind Helen to Helen's location. And then the only thing here that we don't have that we'd really quite like to is we don't have a button, because our original view model here, first view model, has this move command. So we'd like a button. So if we go back to our resources, then what we can do is for first view, what we'll do is just add a button. Let's add it at the top, because that'll make it easy for us to find. Button, and it's capital B, Android : layout height equals, I'll just copy and paste that in a moment. The important thing here is local : MVX bind equals, and what we'll do is when you click it, we'd like to do move command. So I'll do that. I'll copy the layout code. So layout width, we'd just like to wrap content, and then the Android : text for this button we will set to move, please. So let's just run that up, debug, start new, and see if it works. Okay, so back over on our demo platform, if I hit 1, sorry about the color quality and things. So we've got, oh, I set this up in an odd way. I have set this up in an odd way indeed, and it looks like I've broken it by doing so. So let me go back and try again. Okay, so I did that wrong because I've set this up as vertical, but I changed the height rather than the width of my button. So let me change that round, and then let's start running that again. So back over to the camera. So it's up and running again. Again, apologies about the high light quality. If I hit 1, then now I have my map, and hopefully I've got 2 markers, as you can see. So I should be able to zoom into those markers. And now if I hit the move please button, hopefully they will move. So there you go, that's our data binding working to our same view model as it was for touch, and should be up and running. Okay, so now let's try and do some more of the view models. So we're back on the PC. Sorry about this jumping around. And if we take a look, then our second view model was just about one zombie, but was a draggable one. So it was a two-way binding. So let's see whether or not we can do that as well. So let's go down, and what we'll do is we'll copy first view into second view. So there's our first view to second view. This one doesn't need a button on it, so let's just get rid of that button. Done. And then let's take first view and copy it to second view. Obviously you try to reuse more code than this, you wouldn't just cut and paste. So again, this is going to be Control H. Everything that says first I'm going to replace with the word second in this file. Okay, and then what we've got here is, okay, so that's for me fine. Our view model no longer has a Keith, it now has a Han. So I'm just going to add our second option as Han. And what I'll do is have a Han. Get rid of Helen because she's not in this view model. Sorry, Helen. And then we've got this two-way binding for position, but I don't know if a marker has the. Let's see, Han dot. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to work out how to respond when the drag changes. So first of all, we need to set draggable equal to true. So let's do that. In our options for our marker, we will set draggable true. So that will at least allow it to make draggable. And now what we need to do is work out how we're going to respond to Han actually being dragged. So let's see how that is done. Okay, so the only kind of callbacks we get isn't really a callback from the marker object, it's actually a callback from the map object. So if you look at it, what you get is the map fragment.map has a marker drag start and end, and it's that you actually can hook into. So what's probably easiest here is if we just create ourselves a little nested class. What we'll do is call it a public class marker wrapper. And what we'll do is we'll actually set we'll have a location, we'll have a lat long on this, that's easy enough. So this is going to be the lat long, which is going to be called the position, so that's going to stay kind of true. And what we'll do is underneath that lat long, we'll actually have the genuine marker, private marker, which means that we should be able to do a get of return underscore marker dot position and a set. And when we set it, we should be able to do underscore marker dot position equals value. So that will give us a little nested class, and then what we'll do is we will create, initialize that in the constructor, so we should always be there. So we read only marker and marker. And what we'll also do is we'll have a public event handler of position changed, which means it'll play much more nicely with the binding. So we'll just add that in. And then what we should be able to do once we've got that in place is we should be able to add a little interface to it, if you like, called public void set position from map. Fire position changed from map. So this is what's going to get called from the draggable, and in that we should just be able to do position changed, and there is actually an extension method in MvvmCross called raise, which just does the raise this, which just allows it to do, fire the event essentially. So that will then allow us to actually say what we're going to do is here, instead of having the as well as having the marker, let's have a marker wrapper. Let's do it instead. So it's now going to be a marker wrapper called han. So what we'll do is we'll have var han marker equals that, and what we'll do is we'll set underscore han equal to new marker wrapper of the han marker. And that looks like that would just kind of work, except what we also need to do is we need to hook into that map fragment.map.marker drag end plus equal, and when that gets fired, obviously here we know that the only marker we've got is han, so we don't have to test. There is an args.id, I think, args.p0.id, so you could use that to test if you wanted which marker it was, but actually we know, so we know it's going to be ours. So all I'm going to do here is call han.fire position change from map, and with that I think the binding should just work. So again, let me build it and run it across on the device, and hopefully that will run. Okay, so back over on the device, and if we choose 1, we still have that 2 marker 1, which just didn't move, please. Okay, that's not very exciting. Let's go back and let's choose 2, and now hopefully we've just got han, and hopefully if I can just select han and drop them, then hopefully it will have updated. Obviously we don't have any way of showing it's updated, so let's add that. Okay, so we need to show some way that it's updated, so let's go to second view, and again let's just set it up with a text view. So what I'll do is I'll take this, and instead of the button, what I'll do is I'll have a text view at the top. And what I'm going to bind this time is my text to, and so this is called han because it was Han Solo, and that should be it, and it'll just do 2 string on that, so it should be good. So that's our text, and let's just compare that with what we did in touch. For second view, we had a binding, and we had a binding of the title to, actually we just used the location for that. So let me do that as well in second view here. So what I'll do is I'll say we'll bind that text to han.location. Okay, so that should work. So let's run it again. So update it again, and let's just go straight to 2. And I really should add some code to center this, but for now here we are. And now hopefully you can see, but it's really small. At the top there, hopefully you can see the location is 51.40.4. If I drag this, grab hold of it and drag it somewhere, hopefully you can see that location is updated. So our two-way binding is now working. Obviously there are some cosmetic things that could be improved here. Again, if I can grab hold of this thing, it's very hard to actually look at it. If I grab hold of the pin, thank you. Oops. If I do that again, then hopefully you can see it was updated anyway. Okay, so again, if I drag over to there and when I drop it, you can see it's updated. So that's our two-way binding working with a draggable pin. What I'm going to do is go back to the PC and just finish off for this little session. Okay, so we've talked for 40 minutes, which is long enough for one N+1 for definite. And there are a few refinements I could make. Certainly I could make this text a bit bigger. But overall, I hope that you saw that, we took the same back-end code, the same view models, and we've managed to get, something working on both of the, on the Droid as well for the first and second view model. I'll come back in N=41 plan, and I will show the third and fourth and fifth view models, and we'll do a little bit different approach to those. But for now, that's a first quick go through maps on Android. I hope it made some sense. Apologies if I did get things wrong and look things up halfway through. But overall, it took half an hour of coding or less to actually get that and quite a bit of that was my normal mistakes. So Android Maps, hope that's cool. I'll do point 2 really soon.